When Emily Torres first saw the faint pink line on the pregnancy test, she felt like her heart might burst. At 28, she and her husband, Jason, had been trying for nearly a year. Their modest home in suburban Ohio, already filled with love and laughter, was now about to echo with the pitter-patter of tiny feet. The first few weeks were blissful. She was glowing, or so everyone said. Her co-workers at the daycare center teased her lovingly, and Jason couldn't stop beaming whenever he introduced her as his beautiful mama-to-be. But by the end of the first trimester, things started to change. Emily was throwing up constantly, far more than what she'd read in pregnancy blogs or heard from other moms. It wasn't just morning sickness. It was morning, noon, and night sickness. She couldn't keep down toast, water, or even those bland crackers everyone swore by. At her 12-week checkup, she voiced her concerns. The OBGYN, a kind but overworked woman named Dr. Patel, nodded sympathetically. "Some women just have it rougher than others," she said, scribbling something in Emily's chart. "Try to stay hydrated. It should get better in the second trimester." But it didn't. By week 15, Emily had lost 10 pounds. Her skin had taken on a slight yellow hue that no amount of concealer could hide. Her eyes looked sunken, and she couldn't get out of bed some mornings without clutching her stomach in pain. She stopped going to work and started living on her couch, wrapped in blankets, a bucket always within arm's reach. Jason, worried sick, started keeping a journal of her symptoms. "This isn't normal," he kept whispering to himself. But every time they called the clinic, they were told the same thing. "It's just severe morning sickness. Try to ride it out." Then came the night Emily collapsed. It was a Friday evening. Jason had made a light soup in hopes she could stomach it. But as soon as she tried to stand, her knees buckled, and she dropped to the floor, trembling. Her lips were pale. Her skin was clammy. Jason called 911, his voice cracking with panic. At the ER, the attending nurse took one look at Emily and rushed her to the back. Within minutes, a flurry of activity surrounded her. IVs were inserted, blood was drawn, vitals were monitored. Jason stood just outside the curtain, feeling utterly helpless. After hours of tests and scans, a young resident with tired eyes pulled Jason aside. "Mr. Torres," he said carefully, "your wife is in liver failure. We're admitting her to the ICU." Jason blinked. "Liver failure? But she's pregnant. We thought it was just morning sickness." The doctor nodded grimly. "That's what we all assumed. But her bilirubin levels are off the charts. Her liver enzymes are dangerously high. We suspect a rare pregnancy-related condition, possibly acute fatty liver of pregnancy or HELLP syndrome. We won't know for sure until we stabilize her." Jason felt the floor tilt beneath him. Liver failure? That wasn't even on their radar. How could everyone miss this? Inside the ICU, Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, her skin now unmistakably jaundiced. Machines beeped steadily around her, a terrifying lullaby. Jason sat by her side, holding her hand, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Outside, the sky turned gray as a storm rolled in, matching the chaos that now enveloped their lives. The hospital room smelled sterile and cold, but Jason barely noticed. All his focus was on Emily, his beautiful, brave wife, who lay still under the web of tubes and wires. Her once sparkling hazel eyes were now dim, fluttering open only occasionally before drifting shut again. It had been nearly 24 hours since the ICU doctors gave the diagnosis, acute liver failure likely tied to a rare pregnancy complication. They hadn't yet determined whether it was HELLP syndrome, a dangerous form of preeclampsia, or acute fatty liver of pregnancy, AFLP, but either way, the clock was ticking. These conditions could escalate in a matter of hours, putting both Emily and the baby at grave risk. Jason was numb. "How could this happen?" he asked a nurse in the hallway, his voice trembling. "We've been in and out of clinics for weeks. We told them she was getting worse." The nurse, kind but visibly strained from a long shift, offered a tired sigh. "These conditions are hard to catch. They mimic normal pregnancy symptoms. Nausea, fatigue, headaches, even abdominal pain, it all gets chalked up to morning sickness or stress." Jason felt a wave of anger surge through the exhaustion. "So what, you just wait until it's almost too late?" The nurse gave him a pained look. "I'm sorry. We're doing everything we can now. Back in the room, a specialist came in, Dr. Warren, a hepatologist flown in from Cleveland. He reviewed Emily's labs and imaging with a tight jaw. After a few moments of silence, he looked directly at Jason. "She's very sick," he said. "We're looking at a full hepatic shutdown. Her body is struggling to process toxins. If this progresses, we'll have to consider a liver transplant. But that's complicated, especially during pregnancy." Jason sank into the chair beside the hospital bed, his hands trembling. "Can the baby survive this?" Dr. Warren hesitated. "At 15 weeks, the fetus isn't viable outside the womb yet. Our immediate focus is stabilizing Emily. If her condition worsens, we'll be forced to make difficult decisions." Jason looked at his wife's pale face. The same woman who had danced in the kitchen 2 months ago when they found out they were expecting. The same woman who had picked out baby names in a notebook by the bedside. Now she looked like a ghost of herself. That evening, Emily woke up for longer than just a minute. Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "Jason, the baby?" He clasped her hand gently. "Still with us. But you need to fight, Em. They're doing everything they can." She blinked slowly. "I thought I was just weak. I thought it was normal." Jason Torres always thought that hospitals were places where people got better. Where doctors knew what to do, where nurses moved like clockwork, and miracles, though rare, happened. Now he knew better. The ICU waiting room had become his battlefield, a place where time crawled and hope flickered like a dying candle. The coffee was burnt. The lights were too bright. He sat surrounded by strangers, all clutching their own pain, their own prayers. Emily had slipped into a semi-conscious state. She barely reacted when nurses changed her IVs or when he squeezed her hand. Her belly, still too small to show a full bump, rose and fell gently. Their baby was still there. Still holding on. Dr. Warren and the transplant team held an emergency meeting that morning. Jason sat in because Emily had designated him her medical proxy weeks ago, never imagining it would actually come to this. "Her condition is deteriorating rapidly," Dr. Warren began. "We've ruled out HE-LP. It's acute fatty liver of pregnancy. Rare, but extremely aggressive. It's essentially a ticking time bomb." Jason swallowed hard. "There are 2 options," the surgeon said. "We try to keep her stable until the liver recovers, but we risk permanent organ damage. Or we transfer her to a transplant center and prepare for emergency surgery." Jason's mind whirled. "And the baby?" "She's at 15 weeks. We can't deliver. But if Emily's condition worsens, we may need to induce labor anyway to save her." Jason looked down at the hospital table. He felt like someone had split him in half between the woman he loved and the life they had created. "Will she survive the transplant?" he asked. "If we act soon, she has a chance. But timing is everything." Later that night, Jason walked into the chapel downstairs. He hadn't been to church in years. But in that quiet room filled with flickering votive candles and whispering visitors, he knelt and wept. "Please," he said aloud. "I don't care what happens to me. Just save her. Save them both." Meanwhile, upstairs, Emily stirred for the first time in hours. A nurse named Carla, who had been watching her like a hawk, noticed the change. "Emily," she whispered. Emily blinked slowly. "I'm cold," she mumbled. Carla wrapped her in warm blankets and quickly notified the ICU team. Blood pressure dropping. Heart rate irregular. Oxygen saturation low. Jason rushed upstairs to find her room surrounded by doctors and nurses. Monitors beeped louder than ever. Dr. Warren met him outside. "We have to act now," he said. "A liver has become available and she's next in line. We're prepping her for surgery." Jason froze. "A liver?" Dr. Warren nodded. "It's not perfect, but it's viable. It may be her only shot." Jason looked through the window at his wife. She looked so small in the bed. So fragile. He stepped into the room. She opened her eyes, just barely. "They found a liver," he whispered. "You're going to surgery." Her lip trembled. "The baby? You just hang on, okay? Both of you. I'll be right here." They wheeled her away minutes later, down sterile corridors and into the OR. Jason watched until the doors swung closed. Then he sat in the waiting room, heart pounding like a war drum, praying that somewhere in the chaos there would still be a future waiting for them. The transplant surgery was supposed to last 6 hours. It took 9. Jason sat motionless in the waiting area, fingers interlocked so tightly his knuckles turned white. Every time the door opened, his heart skipped. Every time it wasn't a surgeon or a nurse coming for him, his hope dimmed just a little more. He couldn't help but think about the liver donor. Some stranger out there had died to save Emily's life. It was a bitter gift, life and death woven together in brutal harmony. He didn't even know if Emily would wake up to realize she had been given a second chance. At hour 6, a nurse brought him coffee and sat beside him for a moment. "She's strong," the nurse said gently. "You should know that. We've seen plenty of patients, but your wife, she's fighting." Jason nodded, too choked up to speak. He wanted to believe that. God, he needed to believe that. Finally, at hour 9, Dr. Warren appeared. Jason jumped to his feet. "How is she?" "Is she?" "She made it through surgery," the doctor said with tired eyes. "There were some complications and we had to control internal bleeding, but the transplant was successful. She's in recovery now." Jason's knees nearly gave out. "But we're not out of the woods," the doctor added. "We have to monitor for rejection. And the pregnancy, we still don't know if her body can sustain it after everything it's endured." Jason didn't care. She was alive. Emily was alive. That night, he sat by her bedside once more. Her face was pale, but her breathing was stronger. Her hand, warm this time, rested in his. He whispered stories to her. Talked about the baby. Talked about the names they had picked. Talked about the life waiting for them outside the hospital walls. "I need you to wake up, Em," he said softly. "I need you to come back to me. We've got a crib to build and a baby to raise." She didn't respond. But she didn't flatline either. And in that moment, Jason counted that as a win. Over the next few days, Emily's body began to respond. Slowly, miraculously, her liver function improved. The jaundice faded. Her appetite returned. She woke up on day 5. "Jay," she whispered, voice rasped from the ventilator. His eyes snapped open. "Emily?" She gave a weak smile. "Am I okay?" "You're better than okay," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You're here." Tears streamed down both their faces. Later, the obstetrician visited with new scans. The baby was still alive. Heartbeat strong. Growing. "It's a miracle," the OB said, eyes wide. "After what she's been through, most fetuses wouldn't have survived." "Jay," she whispered, voice rasped from the ventilator. His eyes snapped open. "Emily?" She gave a weak smile. "Am I okay?" "You're better than okay," he said, pressing his forehead to hers. "You're here." Tears streamed down both their faces. Later, the obstetrician visited with new scans. The baby was still alive. Heartbeat strong. Growing. "It's a miracle," the OB said, eyes wide. "After what she's been through, most fetuses wouldn't have survived." Emily wept quietly, clutching her stomach. "I thought I lost it. I thought I lost everything." "No," Jason whispered. "You held on. You both did." As the days passed, Emily began physical therapy. She learned to walk again, one shaky step at a time. She kept her hand on her belly, humming lullabies as she walked down the hospital hallway. Nurses and doctors started calling her the Miracle Mom. But even as her strength returned, questions lingered. Would the liver hold? Would her body reject it later? Would she make it full term? They didn't have the answers. But they had each other. And that for now was enough.